Imagine a bad driver tearing down a crowded street without care, without caution, forcing people to jump off his way for fear for their lives. He's clearly under the influence of alcohol and intoxicated by bar courses on the rampage. The police put up a chase and 30 dreary minutes later they catch up with him, apprehend him and arrest him from drunk driving. Now, the driver happened to be white and the neighborhood a black neighborhood. Similarly, in another part of the same city, in a predominantly white neighborhood, another drunk driver tears down a crowded street, evoking similar reactions. People jump off the street as they haul insults at him for driving badly. The cops chase him down as well and arrest him. They're about to book him for drunk driving, and then they stop dead in their tracks and say, "Oh, no, we can't book him for drunk driving. He's black." This has to be reverse drunk driving. Now, if you think this analogy, this dramatization is reaching and doesn't make much sense, well, that's the exact way I feel when I hear the term reverse racism. It doesn't quite make any sense to me. I mean, what is reverse racism? If I were to be an alien who dropped down from an alien planet down to Earth and I heard the term reverse racism, the thing that would first come to my mind was that, oh, this is the opposite of racism. This is the rolling back of racism or racist policies or behavior. And this is something that is eminently desirable, but not quite. When I looked at the definition of reverse racism, Oxford Languages tells me that reverse racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against the person or people on the basis of their membership of a dominant or privileged racial or ethnic group. Now, that's quite an interesting definition because up until the part where it says membership of a dominant or privileged racial or ethnic group, all I could hear is the definition of racism, which is exactly what reverse racism is, because racism isn't an exclusive preserve of a quote dominant or privileged racial group. I mean, discrimination is discrimination, antagonism is antagonism, and this splitting of hairs with the definition of racism is a manipulation of language to make it seem less horrible to be shitty against someone based on the color of the skin. And we can look back in history and ask ourselves, where have we seen this kind of behavior before? Where have we seen this manipulation of language, this deceptive language? Well, we can say that something like separate but equal, which was used to perpetuate segregation based on the color of the skin, that was a deceptive use of language, and we know that language affects the way we think and how we perceive the world. Now, anyone would have a visceral reaction to the word racism being used to target another person. But when you say it's reverse racism, there's a twist to it. Suddenly, it's not as bad or as appalling as it should be. Now, it's more tolerable, even excusable, because, oh, this is not racism. This is just reverse racism. And this idea of reverse racism isn't so divorced from the redefinition of racism to mean prejudice plus power. And the argument is that certain skin tone can't be racist because they have the power. This is obviously a Bullock definition, which I totally disagree with, for the reason that discrimination and antagonism based on the color of the skin doesn't necessarily need a power differential to manifest itself. And if we go back to the original definition of racism, it doesn't even factor in power differential. But let's say I'm charitable and say, oh, black people have no power and therefore they can't be racist. And white people have all the power, so they can be racist. So if you have power, no one who doesn't have as much power as you can be racist against you. But yeah, here's my question. Does anti-Semitism count as racism? Can a black anti-Semite be regarded as racist towards Jewish people? Now, most people would say yes, that anti-Semitism is racism and that the black anti-Semite is clearly racist against Jewish people. Yet one could argue that Jewish people have the sort of political and financial power that black people do not have. So how does one square this apparent contradiction? How can black people be racist against a group who arguably has more power than they do? So from whatever angle or definition you want to look at it, racism is simply racism. Whether it's directed against minorities or dominant or privileged racial groups, people must look beyond race and see a shared humanity that treats everyone with respect and dignity and condemns all forms of discrimination, bigotry, hatred, antagonism on the basis of something as fleeting as the color of one's skin. So, reverse racism is simply racism, nothing else.